Hello, thanks for joining us for Sliding into AT, using PowerPoint to make interactive activities, presented by the Arizona Department of Education, Exceptional Student Services, Assistive Technology team. My name is Mary Keeney, a speech language pathologist and AT specialist for the Arizona Department of Education. So if your first thought was PowerPoint, really? I thought you guys were like supposed to be all good with tech. We hope that maybe you'll think about PowerPoint in a different way after today's training. It's might be so-so as a presentation tool, depending on who's using it, but it can be a great tool to make interactive lessons working with your students in distance learning. And we think you'll think of some applications for these tips and tricks when we're all back in the classroom where we yearn to be. So the title of the session is Slide into AT, because we're going to show you some cool things you can do with PowerPoint slides. A lot of what we're going to be showing you today can also be done with Google Slides, although the way you accomplish it might be slightly different. So the first thing we're going to talk about is backgrounds. Backgrounds can help you do some really cool things, and I'm going to show you how. Let's say that I want a farm scene. I'm going to make an interactive activity for my farm unit. So I find this nice farm scene and I just copy and paste it onto my slide. Well, now it can be moved all around and my students can just delete it. So instead of doing that, I'm going to take the picture that I want and I'm going to save it somewhere where I can find it again. And what I'm going to do, instead of just copying and pasting, I'm going to go up here to my design on my ribbon and to say format. Now, instead of picking a solid color, which you might be used to doing, I'm going to pick picture or texture fill. As soon as you do that, you're going to get this ugly burlap thing. Don't freak out, because the next thing you're going to do is go down here to insert, and it says picture source. So you're going to be looking for the picture that you want from a file. I just put it on my desktop. So there it is, farm and insert. So now the farm can't be moved around or deleted. So it's now my background. Just to review, you're going to go to design on your ribbon, then format background. So now that I have a nice background that can't be moved, the next thing I can do is drop in some images. Now this time I'm just going to do a traditional copy paste. So I'm not going to set them as the background. I'm just going to copy and paste them into my scene. What that means is that these guys can now be moved around because they're not attached to the background. So let's say I'm going to make a little activity like, some of these things don't belong. But I'm thinking this is kind of busy at first glance for some of my students. So I might start with just a white background. And so now you can see, you can go through and talk about all the objects and then go on to my activity. So let's say I was going to sort by things that are alive and things that are not alive. So that's another way I could use the same background and the same manipulatives, but for different activities. So maybe then I'd say, you know what, I want them to sort from smallest to largest. So we could talk about how probably the egg is probably the smallest, and yep, the tractor would be the biggest, and then go through and fill in all these things. I could work on that concept using the same background and the same little images. I could work on which one doesn't belong. Categorization, exclusion. Tiger doesn't belong. And kids enjoy either telling you to, make him go away. So you just delete him or bring him back, or you can just like throw him off there. So you could do that. Same background, same manipulatives. So if you are thinking, I don't like how hard it is to read this text. I really want my students to always be attuned to text and able to see it easily. Here, I have just formatted this text box to have a background. And so now you can see it's got a nice white box. And because it's not a shape, it's actually a formatting of the text box. If I change this, that background is going to come with it. So I really like that trick, and I almost always, whether I'm presenting or working on an activity views with students, I always put format the text box so that it has a background. The next thing you're going to see, this is actually from a site called LessonPix. It is subscription based, but it's really cheap. I think it's $39 for a year. And they have a bunch of game boards. And so what you do is you get the image of the game board, go to your design, format, get the picture, make it your background, and then you put on the game pieces. So the game pieces can move, but the game board doesn't. So you can use a little game. Now, depending on your setup and the student setup and the platform you're using, you might be controlling all the manipulatives. Or if you're using a system where you can give control to the student and that seems like a good idea for that student, then they can move their own game piece. Here's another idea for the same idea of a fixed background and movable objects. This is from Michelle Garcia Winner's Social Thinking, How Big is Your Problem? And if you work with students with autism spectrum or related disorder, students who feel like their current problem is very, very big and it's preventing them from moving on and focusing on anything but the problem. And so there's a specific way to talk students through really deciding really how big is your problem. And so the goal is to move students from their absolute certainty that this is the biggest problem in the world to maybe moving it down to, well, maybe it's like a medium problem, or maybe even it's kind of a small problem. And so again, anything that you want to have a manipulative part and a non-moving part, this is a great way to do it. Here you can see that, oh, one thing to mention, of course, is that you need to be in this view as if you're designing your PowerPoint, because as soon as I go to the presenter view, the objects won't be movable anymore. So you're going to stay in this view where you have all the little slides on the left and the thing you're working here. So you can see that I've got these pennies, and I can move them around because they're not fixed. We were going to throw in a couple of bonus tricks. So one is, normally, if I were trying to change the size of this text, I would highlight it and then get this thing and then drag it down and then go, oh shoot, that's too small. Let me try again. Oh, no, that's maybe too big. Let me try. And okay, we don't have time for that, right? So I'm just going to highlight it, and I'm going to use the control on my keyboard and my left and right bracket. So if I hit control, bracket, it's just going to get bigger for infinity. And then I use my control left bracket, I'm just going to go small. So that's a super easy, fast way, whether you're working on a presentation or for an interactive activity for a student to quickly change the font size. So now that we've got our pennies, and normally the way I used to do it is I would copy and paste. I would get one penny, paste it, then copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, 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 and you'd end up in a big old clump, and then I had to like try to line them up in a row, and it never worked. It was just annoying. So there's actually a much better way to do that. Control D means duplicate. So now you see I have a second penny. But the trick is, before I do anything, I move that second penny to my orderly row. Then if I continue to do Control D, they're just going to line up in a nice orderly row. So let me show you that again. I'm going to take one penny, and I'm going to do Control D to duplicate. If I wanted them to be in a nice horizontal orientation, I'd get the first penny where I want it, and then Control D, and I'll just finish off that row. So I can go horizontal, vertical, or diagonal. And I do appreciate things being in neat orderly rows sometimes, depending on what I'm trying to accomplish with my activity. The last thing, the shortcut key we're going to show you. So we looked at your control right in the bracket for text, making text the right size. And the control D for duplicating and duplicating in an orderly fashion. Now we're going to look at control in your arrows. Let's say that for some reason you want this penny to be at a certain place and you just can't quite get it right. I'm going to drop my mouse, leave this object highlighted, and I'm going to use control and then my arrows. So I have left, right, up and down arrows on my keyboard. I'm just right now hitting the left arrow. And it will keep moving over in teeny bits without veering off up or down, the way you can sometimes happen with your mouse. So now I'm going to move it down. And just move it a little bit left. So this is a neat trick. Of course, you can use your mouse to do the meter movement and then control arrow just to get it exactly where you want it. Sometimes it doesn't matter exactly where the object is, but sometimes it does. So that's an easy way to do that. So this is another example that we were thinking of. We're all about using the same exact idea in a bunch of ways, because that frees your brain up to think about the teacher and therapy kind of things and not constantly like recreating the wheel. So this is the same thing, a fixed background and movable objects. And so this is a first then. So many of you might be familiar with working with students who first the non-preferred activity, and for some students it would just be first the non-preferred activity and then the preferred activity. This student has moved on to first and next and then. And so this student is going to do some calming giving, and then they're going to do some math, and then they choose what they're going to do. So you'd say, when we are done with breathing and math, you can do a Go Noodle and we can dance around. We can watch the jellyfish cam, or we can eat some goldfish crackers. And of course, you would get information about what the student prefers to decide what these are. But once they say they want to work for, let's say, the jellyfish cam, then I just move it up there, and now it's my visual support that we're going to do our breathing and we're going to do our math, then we're going to watch the jelly cam. So I could swap these out for different students and just leave all of this the same. Another one, and you can see I've got this one filled out from a previous presentation. But let me just show you again that practice. Control D, move it in a nice straight line, and then Control D, D, D. There's my 5 stars. So this student is really liking Moana right now. So this is a 2-minute Lego movie. If you haven't looked at the Lego movie channel on YouTube, it's pretty great because they're all pretty short. So this student is working for the Moana Lego movie. And just like the physical token boards you might be used to using in your classroom, as a task is completed, depending on, probably it will be you controlling these, it could be the student. And once they've moved all the stars up, then yay, now we're going to watch Moana. So that's another activity you could do with the same concept, fixed backgrounds and movable pieces. Some of these we're going to skip till the very end because we do need to go into full screen mode for you to see how they work. And so just to avoid some technology issues, we're going to save those till the end. So the next neat thing is using high contrast. So you remember the farm activity with the busy background and all the animals. Here's the same animals, but now it's a black background. So now you can see that the animals are so much more visible. Look at our little egg, he really pops. Everything really pops now without that distracting background. So maybe not just students with low vision, but also students with attention issues would do better with this kind of approach. And then of course, once I've got this dark background, I can have some very high contrast text. And so I can ask the student to tell me, or they can move around and put the text where it belongs. And again, it's just highlight your text and make it yellow. And of course, you remember that if I want that text to be even bigger, I'm just gonna control right bracket. Too far, left bracket. And so that's practicing an easy way to change the font size. So then I could also make a little sentence and ask my students, what do you think? I think pigs are cute, smelly, smart. And whatever they would say, then I would move it in to complete the sentence for them. So I think pigs are smelly. And then you can ask the student, do you think this smelly pig should be like really giant? Is it a giant stinky pig, or is it like a really teeny baby? And one of the advantages of PowerPoint over some admittedly much cooler online activities is that when you do an activity like this, the student's interacting with you. And together you're interacting with this simple activity instead of the student interacting with the computer on maybe a better, fancier application, but where you take out the communication and the language part. So there's my tiny pig. So the next thing we like about PowerPoint are the pens. So there are these pens in PowerPoint. I can never find them, but I don't worry about that because the search feature here is honestly the way I do it. I just type in pens and then it says, here's your pens. What pen do you want? And I'd say, oh, I think I want the red pen. So now I can have the student tell me, or the student can draw a line. And let's say they make a mistake and they're like, oh, no. Control Z, easily undo it, make it go away. And you can also do all kinds of things with the pen, like, circle the first letter, or, write the word cow, or cross out the thing that doesn't belong, or, whatever. There's all kinds of things. Now, you're not going to be doing handwriting practicing with these pens, really, because they're not that, but they're for gross activities. Is that a thing? I should ask Mitch, the OT. Gross fine motor stuff. You also can insert a line. So here I have a line. It's just a shape, but I can ask a student, which of these words doesn't belong? I could have also given them the pen, crossed it out, had them highlight it. There's all kinds of ways I could have them tell me. And again, I just search for the pen. There it is. The timers is a full screen activity, so we're going to come back to that at the end. And the videos is a full screen activity. So text-to-speech is built into PowerPoint, just like it is in the other members of the Microsoft suite. So here you can see some text I pasted from some source about the water cycle. If I highlight it, up here on my above sign, there's a tiny play area arrow. If I hit it,
water on the earth evaporates, turns into an invisible gas, and rises up into the sky.
It's going to read the text on the slide. So that can be handy for students that need support and you want to leave directions and have the directions read out loud to the student. You want to leave text they're going to need to leave you a spoken response about. They can just listen to the text. The next thing we're going to show you, neat thing number 7, is using animations. So at this point, we're going to move into our full screen view. I hope that you will be seeing the full screen now. And so this is animations. And so on this screen, when I click, you can see the lecture just bounce on. And then I can ask the student, what do you think will happen next? And that's just an animation. Like usually you use that in a presentation to have, an object vanish or exit or spin. But while I don't use those very often in presentations, I do use them sometimes when I'm making an interactive activity. So I just had this tractor animate, and for animate, I just had it bounce, right? So here you can see I have a little recording. And so I could click and then.
What do you think will happen next?
I've left a voice recording of me asking the student, what do you think will happen next? All right. Now we'll talk a little bit about using sound in PowerPoint. So here you can see that we have two photos, and this is VI maybe, but this is definitely Bonnie Raitt. So let's say that the student has been working for a dance break, and so they've gotten their work done and you're ready to have a little dance break. So everyone's going to get up and move around, but you don't want it to be like a 50-minute dance break. It's going to be short. So you say to them, do you want to listen to VIC or Bonnie Raitt? And let's say they pick this guy. Well, pick this guy.
All the shorties in the club, let me see you just back it up, drop it down, let me see you just get low, scrub the ground, let me see you just push it up, let me see you just wobble baby, wobble baby, wobble baby, wobble, yeah. Wobble baby, wobble baby, wobble baby, wobble, yeah. Wobble baby, wobble baby, wobble baby, wobble, yeah. Wobble baby, wobble baby, wobble baby, wobble.
So I decided how long of an audio clip I wanted to have. So you could have made it shorter, you can make it longer based on your student. But I thought that was a good time to clip the song off. It's enough time to get up and move, but not too much time to like tip over into hard to come back. So if I had picked Bonnie Raitt. So how I did that is in the same way that you would normally record audio. You know that you usually get that little speaker icon. Well, you can change that picture to be anything you want. So instead of a little speaker icon, which is too small of a target, I just said change that picture for a giant transparent square. And I put the giant transparent square over this guy. And then I did the same thing. I had the audio from my computer, recorded it right in PowerPoint for as long as I wanted the clip to be. Then I right click on that little speaker, that tiny little speaker icon, right click, and you get the option to change the picture. And I made it into a giant invisible square. If your students are really working on access and targeting, I could have a single picture and basically cover the entire surface of the monitor with one invisible square. Or if their motor skills were good enough, I could have had like 6 options on this thing, and whichever one they picked would be the one that played. So that's kind of fun. The next thing we're going to look at is using links. So you're probably very used to using hyperlinks in a document or even in a HyperDoc. So basically a link is a little bit of programming that's telling something when this is clicked, go here. And so what we have here are 2 icons. One that stands for Let's Dance and one stands for I want to see the jelly cam. So I have linked these 2, and the place that I link them to is to another slide in the presentation. So if that makes sense, if they pick this, you can tell because it turns into this hand that this is linked to something. This is not linked, this is linked, this is linked. So if they say, oh, I really want to see the jelly cam, then it's going to take them to the slide that has the jelly cam. And then we're going to watch the jelly cam. sorry, I'm going to escape back. So in this way, you could do a bunch of stuff. You could either say, do you want to do math or a book? Do you want to, you know, if you're doing exercises, do you want to see a video and we're going to do a Go Noodle, or we're going to do calming meditation, or anything you can think of where you want the student to make a choice, and then you can just go there. The next thing is lesson picks. If you, we might save this one till the end too. So here's a background similar to the one that I was showing you, but I've got a couple of objects that I've added. So I started out with a regular ocean screen, but I want to add a treasure chest and a ship because I want to work on some prepositions. So I want to be able to say above, below, next, whatever. So I want to add these guys. So, oops, sorry. What I'm going to do is get the objects that I want to add and copy and paste them the normal way. But now similarly, I'm like, wait, I don't want the students, I don't want these to move. I want this to become part, because I couldn't find the exact right background I wanted. That's not a problem, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just use my snipping tool and take a picture of this with the objects that I want added. Now it's a picture. And if I save it to my desktop, where I save everything, apparently, and I want to call it shipwreck ocean background, and save it. So now when I've got my blank, I'm going to go design, format my background, get a picture, insert from a source, from a file. I just save that ocean and insert it. So there, now this guy's fine. And in the next view, I've added a bunch of stuff that I can just move around. All of the clip art you're seeing here is from lesson picks, all of these. So that's how you can make a custom background. You could even do something like super fun, like find a background that you want and fix your student to it. Have your student be standing on the moon, or standing, and you could hand him things. Or if you don't fix him, you could make your student go places and do things. So you're not stuck with an image that you just find. You can alter it and make a custom image too. Let's see, how are we doing on time? Check. All right, I think the last thing we did not get a chance to show you are just using some timers. So another thing that's a full screen. So let's say that you are doing distance learning, or you're back in the classroom and you want to have an easy way to say when it's time to come back, or when what you're doing is going to be over. There's lots of reasons why we love having timers in our classroom. So what you can see here is that I have taken a timer from YouTube. So basically all you do is go to YouTube and search 5-minute timer, and you'll get like a million options. You can even do things like 2-minute dinosaur timer. And a lot of times I get lucky and find exactly the timer that I want. And so this one is down. It has music. So if you've given that student a chance to take a break and run away and just get some savings out, and a drink or whatever, they can use the that's one timer that I just liked that I put on here. But then I found a different one, like maybe your student's really into lizards or whatever. So that's a fun thing to do, is insert timers. You can also insert video. So here I have inserted a video from the Calm YouTube channel, and it's nice because I'm not going directly to YouTube. I don't see all that distracting stuff. I just see this. So I'm gonna play it. It's actually one of my favorites, and you can see that I've changed the background color of the slide to kind of go with the overall look of this YouTube video, but you certainly don't have to do that. So I think that brings us to the end of our session. If you have any questions, please email us at atinfo@az.gov. We can put that, I guess we should put on a slide. atinfo@zed.gov. We think that you're going to have a lot more fun with PowerPoint than you thought you could, but let us know what you do with it. And if there's other tips or tricks we should know about, we'd love to hear about it. Thanks. Bye.